So I just want to say thanks again to Carol for kind of setting the stage and giving us an understanding of how the feeling of wanting to connect and become one, and so many of you had expressed that in the comments that you made, to understand that becoming a part of something greater that kind of lives and breathes and encompasses us and makes us want to become part of a whole is really what this is about. And the title here that I've given the gathering is Connecting and Becoming One. So that's exactly the idea that I want people to understand, that this work can be entered in many ways. And today we're going to enter it through one of the aspects of all the work. But people have asked me, how did I come up with this idea? And it comes from a story that is very ancient. It came from the 2nd century, where there was a burning Torah scroll, and the letters were flying up to the heavens. And a friend said, I hear this story, every year we come back around to it in services. And I know that there's more to the story than just this. Maybe you can come up with some idea, some image that will tell that story. So I thought about it for quite a long time, and I said, well, what could the letters be made of that they don't burn? And I understood that the letters were made of light, and the light was going back to the heavens. So the imagery began. This is the journey about connecting to that energy, to that light that's in the heavens. And this is about our threads of connection. When we came around and introduced ourselves, we talked about how we're here and how we're connected to the people who are here. And I call those the threads of connection. And the way that I'd like people to, what we have here is a sampling of the work. What we have on the walls are the photos, the images of the panels. I'm sorry you can't see the first one. Maybe you can peek around, but we have some images here. And the way to get into it in a way that's guided is through an image that I came up with that's called the Guiding Principles. And I call it a visual meditation because it's about having something in front of your eyes that takes you and guides you on a pathway. So this is an image that I came up with. And what we're going to do is take it and break it down into layers. And the first layer is about universal, eternal, and timeless. And that's where Carol's talk came in today, is to understand that there are experiences that can happen to people universally through time. They could have happened at any time, and they're about connecting with the one that's eternal. And so dance certainly goes back. People have wanted to dance, to move to music, to release their grasp on what's around them, and to fly through the air. Carol said ballet is about being in the air. Allison, who teaches Israeli dance, knows that it's about becoming one with the music and the people who are there and having one guiding experience together. Mary, you talked about that with the choir. Understanding that your own individual experience and drive are only a part of what it is. It's really understanding that you're part of something greater to create this beautiful experience of joining with all that is. So within this exhibition, it is an exhibition, it will be because it will encompass a complete gallery. There are examples of imagery that have to do with the universal, eternal, and timeless. And the first is where the first panels were. They were about the heavens, about the light in the heavens. The heavens is certainly universal. We all experience it for all time. People have looked up and seen the stars and thought with wonder how beautiful it is. There's lightness and darkness. There's about the atmosphere. There are trees. There's a section on trees. These are trees that were ancient, found in the text of the Torah, which is the Bible or the Old Testament. So they were present at that time. There's light, which indicates seasons and changes. And there's geometry, which you can see all of these pieces of geometry around us. Geometry is a universal language, as mathematics, as is dance. And in this case, the geometry is symbolic of the sacredness of the letters and the words that are being expressed on them. There is a field called sacred geometry, and it was really about, it's present all the time, but at the time when sacred buildings were being constructed, it was about the proportions and having them in perfection. You know, as I said to you about the dance, it was like watching perfection. And perfection is just one of those experiences when you see something that it just inspires your heart to leap and awe. So here I'm going to show you some of the examples. This is the first piece that was done in the heavens. It was about the heavens. And at the ends you can see there's a scroll. Well, the Torah, the Bible, the Old Testament, for Jewish people is written on a scroll. But mostly the scrolls, as an early form of book, were about text. They weren't necessarily about image. This is a scroll that has its story all in imagery. And it's about the story of the heavens. Each segment of this exhibition has a name. This one's called Torah min Hashamayim, which is a transliteration of the Hebrew, and it means heavenly Torah or Torah from heaven. It can mean both. This is what we're going to be dealing with today, right here, this segment that's called Connect. And I'll be taking you through that as we go through the talk. This is the section that's up here. This is called Torah Ora, Torah of light, the light of Torah. This is made up of atmosphere. It's about the Torah that's the words that are in our atmosphere that we can see or not, and the illuminated letters that are there. This is Torah Ora, Torah of light, light of Torah. And this again is the root, the concept that we're going to be dealing with. There's also a segment of trees. You can see this panel here. The trees going through their colors for the seasons. And this also is a book. The two previous were scrolls. This is a book that's called an accordion book. And it will go down the center of a gallery, kind of zigzagging, with these trees on one side of the book. This is called Pardes, paradise or orchard. And these trees on the back side of the book.
Different trees?
These are 18, these are the same as the others, but the coloring is reversed. So where the tree on the other side was the positive image, here it's the negative image. This is this tree here. Each of the 18 trees is a tree that was found in the text of the Torah, so it was in existence at that time and is in existence today. Each one has a scientific name and a common name and a characteristic that relates to the concept that is placed on this tree. So this one is a tamarisk tree. It's in the place of connect, and it was where Abraham, who was early in the text of the Bible, the Torah, wanted to make a connection to the one. So that's the connection to this, choosing this type of tree. The trees themselves, to me, just like the light in the heavens contains all of history, the trees contain all of history. The atmosphere that we have contains all of history. And here's the geometry. This is the geometry that's in the heavens, and it precedes, attracts the letters that are in the heavens to form these roots. Starts with a triangle, moves to a square, the sides, where the letters are, moves to a pentagon, and here moves to a hexagon. So these, again, are ancient. They were discovered in ancient times. They're a universal image that people understand. You don't have to have a specific language other than understanding what geometry is, and they're timeless. These are the particles that are on the tree panels, and these are the particles that are hanging here in the atmosphere. So we've covered universal, eternal, and timeless, the first layer of entering the work. So if you were going through the exhibition, I would suggest for people to just go through and view what imagery there is that speaks to the universal, eternal, and timeless. So now the next layer of understanding and the installation and moving through it would be to take the language and understand that there are roots, text, and context. Again, we're starting here with connect. This is our root for connect. And we're going to come upon translations from lines from the Bible, the Torah, and where we see an illuminated word, that's the word that will come from the root. The root is a shoresh. That's how we call it in Hebrew. So we'll start with the beginning. Roots, actually before roots. How a language develops. This is how Hebrew developed, understanding it. This is an image, pretty universal, just a square. This was at a museum in Eugene. And, you know, anybody can understand what this says. And then this is a painting by Keith Haring, where he's used images. He probably has a story. I could come up with a different story that's based on the dogs that are having a little disagreement, and the angel mermaid, and the human that kind of looks like they're out to lunch. You would come up with a different story, but that's based on images that the artist chose to tell a story and leave it open. This also was in the museum. I came upon it and I said, it's special, it's here, but I don't know what it says. I don't know whether it's a story or a poem. It's obviously a language, but how can I get into it? And for most people, Hebrew is like that. So what I wanted to do, because this exhibition, this installation is so drawn to Hebrew and the text from the very beginning and the words from the very beginning, it's important that people have a way to go into it and begin the process of reaching through time, not with somebody else's interpretation or explanation in English, but to reach all the way back and find those letters and find a way to break into them. This was the label on the wall, that it was a Korean scroll, but it said nothing about what the language was about. So this gives you a clue about the development of Hebrew. We're going to talk about how the language began with images. That's how they conveyed, in a written way between people. So here's a steer's head, here's a human, an eye. I'm sure others could interpret various different symbols that are used here. And then the next layer, they moved away from exactly using the symbols and came to a little bit more looking like squiggles. But they meant something to somebody, because you could now put something down, pass it to somebody else, and they could interpret a little bit what you were saying. And then the next 3 layers are other developments of the letters, and the bottom 3 layers are how you would find the letters today. So this is a special font, a special style of letter that's used in sacred writings. It has little crowns, and you'll see it show up later with some of the writings that I did. This is block letters. These are block letters, and these are script letters. So if you were to go to a place where they were speaking Hebrew, you'd see some form of these letters today. And the scroll, the ancient Torah scroll, is written in these letters. So there you have kind of a collapse of of time right there. This is where we're going to start. It's the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which is called Aleph Bet. And if you were to open the books that are on the table, at the little tabs that are there, there should be an Aleph there for each of you to see. That's an individual letter, but when there are three letters together, it can form an idea, and it's called a root. And in Hebrew, that's called a shoresh. So I may use those interchangeably. These right here are how I began the process. First, in the heavens, I understood the letters went up to the heavens, and that the letters then were almost like magnets with these geometric forms. And they came and became part of the sides of these geometric forms. So I knew what the roots were. You can see up at the top what these roots are, and that's how they are here. Hebrew goes right to left. These go right to left. And it starts right here with these first three, Or, Sarah, and Echad. They form, in translation, a sentence and an invitation to the viewer to illuminate, to wrestle, and connect. I'm going to show you here on the next panel. Here we have the translations of all of these. So illuminate, wrestle, and connect. That's the invitation to the viewer. And that was this first panel. Then between that, I determined that what I wanted to convey to people were values of how to live life that were found in the text of the Torah. So from these ancient words, through seeing them, through finding them in prayers, through finding them in the text of the Torah, I came to understand that these were important values. They're not the only values, but they were ones that I wanted to convey through this work. So love, justice, righteousness, Torah, what the teaching is about, and to remember. Love, how was I going to do a picture of love? I really didn't want to use humans because there's, things that are involved that people don't want to see humans. So that's when I came up with the understanding that love is multifaceted, and it led me to geometry. And the way we see love, we can't really see love, is through our deeds and through our words. Those are the characteristics that balance it out. Justice, righteousness, that's on a spectrum. Goes from justice to righteousness. And the ways that I understood that to be enhanced were through courage and truth. So there, we've gone through two. Now, Torah, so this was triangles, squares. I worked my way up to pentagons. So what was 5 about? 5 had to be about the 5 books of Moses, which is another name for the Torah, another name for the Bible, or the Old Testament. But here it wasn't just about the stories that were in the Torah, but it was about the teachings about how to live, how to build a society, and the essence of moving forward within the structure of this book, scroll, writing. And the ways that it is enhanced are through understanding that there's holiness within this and that there's wisdom within this. And the last concept was remember. Because we work our way through the year, we celebrate holidays as Jews, and part of what this is all about is remembering back to, that we were slaves, and that on the 7th day of creation we were also given the ability to rest as the one rested. And yet there's so many other places to remember. As eventually I came to understand that remembering wasn't just about remembering, but it was about reimagining for ourselves how to take this in. The last line is about commitment, and it's about understanding from the very place that one is at this very moment, through all of these actions, love, justice, righteousness, Torah, and remember, through these actions, you can become part of the covenant which is the connecting to the one that is the possibility. Again, we're still on this. There's so much, and yet we're going to stay focused on this root, this concept. And here it is in Hebrew. Everybody has their aleph, so we all know that that's what this letter is. This is a chet and a daled. And at the top of these pages, you can see that they're the letter names, the shapes that you saw, and beside it, there's a way to pronounce it, echad. So from these three-letter roots, words were able to be formed and with prefixes and suffixes. And here's the image that tells you about the prefixes and suffixes. Suffixes are at the end of words. This tree does not have any prefixes, but here are those words laid out in a special order. This is called a Kabbalistic tree of life. So Kabbalah is the mystical and spiritual connection to the one that's part of Judaism that most people know a little about, but not a lot because there's so much to know. So that will be for another salon. And this is how they're translated from those words that you just saw. So there's a variety. Some of them are one, some of them are few and fleeting, and such. These words then gather into text on top of the trees. Here it is on top of the tree. That's the same as the tamarisk tree here. Initially, the particles were under the ground and became up into the trees to become the leaves and letters and then blossom into more leaves as the particles are drawn up into the tree and move out into the atmosphere. Here you can see the word for that tree, the echad, and its root down at the bottom. And then there are words that are in silver that are part of another tree. So the Hebrew text and words are found on those trees. This is in this book, you'd find those lines of Torah and their English counterparts, their English translations, and the poetic translations. And those were found through a study group. I brought together two other people, Rabbi Lori Ruttenberg and Miles Hochstein, and we went directly into the text of the Torah, not using any other translations, and found our own translations for those words in a contemporary sense, where we have italic is our commentary, our additional words beyond what's there, and we laid it out, Miles laid it out as poetry. Here's another example of a line. This is the one that's in the 8th place speaks about the immigrants. So I felt that choosing specific lines was important. Here is Torah, an actual Torah. And I want you here to be able to see how words show up. This is from the very beginning, the first column, and it's all handwritten. And here's, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. But you can see that we have words that are highlighted that have to do with our roots. Here's our word for this time. And you can see the letter. What letter is it? An aleph, right. So there you go. You just read a letter from the Torah. So that's the context. We're putting things in a contemporary context. This is the Hebrew that's on this panel. It happens to be the main prayer for Judaism, but it talks about becomes one. So we talked about how when we dance, we're part of a greater whole, and that feeling that we get of reaching and connecting to the one is what we're looking for here. So these are the first two layers of the visual meditation. These are the ones together. universal, eternal, and timeless, and root, text, and context. Again, this is the complete guiding principles. And now we're talking about connecting to the awe, which is where we began. Each of these translated words from the root, the first three, the invitation, the four that are the characteristics that we're looking for to live by, and the commitment, the last three, are all opportunities to connect to the one through each of these ways of being, living, or joining with. And here you find all of those words in a circular format that kind of speaks to the unending opportunity of trying to reach through these to connect. So if I want to give you a little visual, a little video, this isn't a video, but this is a little picture of in the heavens, how to connect. There's a prayer shawl, a talit, that's in the heavens. When you go out and you see all of the stars, it's as if it was a blanket of stars above you. So I pictured this as a prayer shawl that had stars, was made up of stars. And in the corners of the prayer shawl is a fringe, a tie. It has a very specific meaning that relates to understanding how you're supposed to live. It's a ritual piece. And it also spoke to me about wrestling. So it was illuminate, wrestle, and connect. This was where our root is for today. With the infinite, the infinity sign that's reaching towards the earth. And at the end of the fringes on the heavenly talit is where this guiding principles goes. And I want you to think about this aleph as if it was an outlet, an electrical outlet. And the cords bring the electricity of the heavens, of the light in the heavens, to this outlet. And this is our personal prayer shawl coming out from the place where we are today through our actions. And we have the opportunity to be part of the connecting experience, reaching out into the heavens, so that the personal threads of connection can join through this electrical outlet cord to the energy of the heavens. So we went through universal, eternal, and timeless, root, text, and context, connecting to the awe, the place where we connect through the aleph, and the complete guiding principles. So again, this was where we went through connect, how to connect, not only through the words that we have, but through what it tells us about our experience. This is how these panels come about. Illuminate, wrestle, and connect, that invitation to the viewer to join in the work of and the imagery of what's being presented. Illuminate was the first salon. Wrestle was to be this one, but it had to get switched to the next one. And connect. Now, Nancy said there's a lot here. And I know that. But if I wanted to send you off with just one phrase, one story to keep in mind as you move away, it would be this, because, hold on, it has 5 of the words that are part of the project. So you can see them in gold. And this is what it says. I'll count out these are the ones. So it says, Shimon the tzaddik of righteousness and justice, that's the first root, was among the last of the great assembly, and he would say that the world stands on 3 illuminated words. On the radiant Torah teaching, to learn, to teach, to delve, and grow wise. On the service, serving others, to connect, the below to the above, the within to the beyond, the limited to the limitless, and the finite to the infinite, and on acts of devoted loving kindness. To give without desire for repayment, whether with money or with deeds, whether to the poor or to the rich, and whether to the living or the dead, but above all to the dead, for they can never repay. So it's this open heart through all your actions, to go forth and live your life, but remember that this is a way, through doing these things, that you can connect and be part of all that is.